Ladies, listen. Yeast infection is not a toilet infection. Stop blaming the toilets, stop blaming the surrounding, and start taking responsibility. Understand this, that normally we have yeast in our mouth, in our throats, in our vagina, and in our gut. It is actually a normal flora, and yeast has no problem. Okay, the fungi that is in your vagina and in your body has no problem. It only gets to be a problem when it overgrows. And apparently, we are the ones that allow it to grow by what we do. So remember, in the vagina, three things are involved. Number one, there is good bacteria that if their population is higher, and then they will suppress both the bad bacteria and also they will keep the yeast in check. Number two, it's the pH. So anything that messes up the pH of your vagina will expose you to yeast infection. And number three, what are you eating? Because what you eat is either what will deny the fungal conditions food or what will serve them food so that they multiply faster and they overwhelm the good bacteria and your immunity in general. That will mean you'll start suffering from recurrent yeast infections. Now, having a yeast infection once in a while is not a problem, but when it becomes every time you have a recurrent yeast infection, you're treating with antifungals and nothing is happening, that's why you should start taking keen of what you are eating and what you're doing. So this video is about the causes of recurrent yeast infection. Once you understand those causes, you can easily know where you lie, and therefore you can easily undo what you've been doing. Number one, we have diseases. Now, which diseases lower our immunity? Because we said about the three major reasons why you'll get a yeast infection is the pH, is the food, and is the bacteria population. So diseases like HIV, diseases like cancer, these are diseases that will actually lower immunity and allow the yeast to multiply and overwhelm you, causing you yeast infection. Number two on the list is drugs. Which drugs am I talking about? There are people who have been done either kidney transplant or an organ transplant or grafting, and they have to use drugs that suppress their immunity, the immunoglobulins, the steroids. These are drugs that will actually suppress your immunity. And once they do that, definitely you end up getting a yeast infection because the normal flora now, which is the yeast, starts being infective, which is basically sometimes known as opportunistic infections. And then, so steroids are here. And by the way, when I'm talking about steroids, not only are they used to suppress the immunity, we know most people who have asthma and chronic asthma for that matter are always on an inhaler that has a steroid drug. These are the likes of the dexamethasone, the budesonide, the beclomethasone, all these that end with ONE. Okay, those are drugs that are steroid in nature, and they can be used to treat asthma or manage asthma. However, their side effect is lowering the immunity, so you'll end up having problems. So start working on your asthma. And then number three, we have hormonal contraceptives. Now, we've sung about hormonal contraceptives in this channel for the longest period of time. We've actually told you that birth control is in the hands of the men. But if you ignore that and go ahead and put an implant, go ahead and have that injection, go ahead and pop those pills, pop the P2s every weekend, these are drugs that one of the side effects will actually lower your immunity, therefore fungal infection will come. And number two, they are estrogenic in nature, so they raise your estrogen, and high estrogen in the system is actually linked to yeast infection. This is the reason why most pregnant women are predisposed easier to yeast infection. And women, when they have their menses or their menstrual cycle, they have problems with yeast infection during the estrogenic phase, because estrogen is totally linked to low immunity and to problems with yeast infection. Therefore, drop that hormonal contraceptive. If you have to go to the extreme, then try a copper coil, which basically will bring you infections, but not as recurrent as when you're using a hormonal contraceptive. Okay? And now, number four is misuse and abuse of antibiotics. Anytime you have a common cold, you're running to the pharmacy, you're going to take amoxicillin, you're going to take your favorite antibiotic, the azithromycins. These are antibiotics that are broad spectrum. So they will kill both the good and the bad bacteria. And remember, in our first, as we started this video, we said good bacteria are there to help you balance the bad bacteria and also help you keep in check the yeast infection. Therefore, if you take antibiotics all the time, you will have a problem because you will lower the population of good bacteria, and then now the opportunistic infections will come in. So do not abuse antibiotics. Use antibiotics only when necessary and when prescribed by a doctor. Don't abuse or misuse antibiotics. Number 5 on the causes of fungal or recurrent yeast infection is definitely one thing that all of you know, we appreciate, but it's so hard for us to quit it. This is sugar in all forms. And I'm talking about sugar in all forms because I know of women who are actually using pineapples. So they eat pineapples so that they can easily, their vagina can smell nice. They can easily get hygienic, in quotes, hygienic vagina. But if at all your vagina does not smell nice, then definitely that means you've been eating the wrong foods or you've been doing the wrong things. So no amount of fruit or sugar will solve that for you. By the time you're thinking of eating that pineapple, it means you have a foul smell. You don't have a very hygienic vagina. Therefore, fix what you've been eating. Okay? So no, don't use pineapples because pineapples have sugars, and sugars are actually foods that feed the yeast infection. Also remember, sugar in all forms actually slows down the flow of white blood cells towards your vagina. That is the neutrophils. These are cells that actually are the first line in fighting infections. So once you sluggish, when you slow down your immune system or your immune cells from reaching the target, that becomes a problem because now it will give chance to the microorganisms to multiply and cause you problems. Okay, so pineapples and yogurt, stay away from them. They will not help you. Okay, please, sugar is sugar in all forms. Stay away from it because it will mess up. So those are the top 5 causes of recurrent yeast infection. So if either of them, if you're a culprit of either of them, change it. Do the opposite.